The lights in the cantina were dim and smoky. Strange music played from speakers that buzzed and crackled. Aliens from dozens of different worlds sat at tables, drinking and talking in loud voices. The air smelled like metal and spilled alcohol. In the darkest corner sat Zixathara. His forearms rested on the table around a glass of blue liquid. His skin was hard like armor, covered in scars from old battles. Two of his arms were missing fingers. One eye was milky white from an old wound. The other aliens gave him space. They knew he had seen terrible things. 3 young aliens approached his table. They were from different worlds, but they all had the same look in their eyes. They wanted to hear war stories. They thought battle was exciting and glorious. "Old warrior," said the first one, a green-skinned Catherian with smooth features. "Tell us about the great battles. Tell us how the coalition defeated the rebels." Zixathara looked up slowly. His good eye studied the younglings. They were barely adults. Their skin was unmarked by combat. Their voices were strong and confident. "You want war stories?" Zixathara's voice was rough like gravel. The translator box on his chest buzzed as it changed his words into common speak. "What do you know about war?" "We know the coalition won because we had better ships," said the second youngling, a tall gray being with 6 legs. "We had better weapons and more soldiers." "We know humans joined late in the war," added the third, a floating creature with tentacles. They were new to space, soft pink things that barely knew how to fight. Zixathara's mandibles clicked together sharply. The sound made other aliens at nearby tables look over nervously. When a Veltar warrior made that sound, it usually meant someone was about to die. "Soft?" Zixathara repeated the word like it tasted bad. "You think humans are soft?" The younglings shifted in their seats but tried to look brave. The green one spoke again. "Everyone knows humans are weak. Their skin tears easily. They break bones from small falls. They need machines to breathe in space." Zixathara was quiet for a long moment. He picked up his glass and drank the blue liquid slowly. The cantina seemed to get quieter around them. Other aliens were listening now. "Let me tell you about humans," Zixathara said finally. "Let me tell you about the day I learned why every warrior in the galaxy checks twice before entering human space. Let me tell you about Jake Morrison." The younglings leaned forward eagerly. This was what they had come for. "It was during the siege of Kepler 442b, Zixathara began. The planet was important because it had rare metals we needed for our ships. The humans had a small mining colony there, maybe 500 people total. We thought it would be easy." He paused to drink again. His scarred hands shook slightly as he held the glass. "I was a commander then. I led 3,000 of our finest warriors. We had the best weapons, the best armor, the best training. The humans had 30 soldiers. 30. That sounds easy," said the gray youngling. Zixathara's good eye fixed on him. "That's what I thought too." He continued his story. "We landed on the planet expecting a quick victory. The human colony was built into a mountain. There was only one way in, through a narrow valley with high walls on both sides. Perfect for defense, but what could 30 humans do against 3,000 of us?" The floating youngling made a dismissive sound with its tentacles. "Nothing. They should have surrendered." "They should have," Zixathara agreed. "Any sensible species would have. But Jake Morrison was their leader. He was a captain in something called the Colonial Marines. When we sent a message demanding surrender, he sent back 2 words. "What words?" asked the green youngling. "Come try." The younglings laughed. They thought this was funny. Zixathara did not laugh. "We attacked at dawn," he said. "Wave after wave of our best warriors charged into that valley. Morrison and his 30 humans were waiting for us." Zixathara's voice grew quiet and distant. He was remembering things he wished he could forget. The first wave was 100 warriors, elite fighters with plasma rifles and energy shields. They should have overwhelmed the humans in minutes. But Morrison had placed his soldiers perfectly. Every rock, every piece of cover was used. The humans didn't waste a single shot. He paused, and looked at each youngling. 97 of my warriors died in the first 10 minutes. The humans lost no one. The younglings stopped smiling. This was not the story they expected. I sent another wave, then another. Each time, the humans were ready. They moved like they could read our minds. When we came from the left, they were waiting on the left. When we tried to climb the walls, they dropped explosives on us. Zixthara's mandibles clicked again. By the end of the first day, I had lost 800 warriors. The humans had lost 3. But you had so many more soldiers, protested the gray youngling. How could they stop you? Because humans don't fight like other species, Zixthara explained. When we get wounded, we fall back to heal. When we get tired, we rest. When we run low on ammunition, we retreat. Humans do none of these things. He leaned forward, his scarred face inches from the younglings. I watched Jake Morrison fight for 6 days straight. 6 days without sleep, without rest, without proper food. He had a hole in his side from a plasma bolt that should have killed him. He wrapped it with cloth and kept fighting. The younglings were very quiet now. Other aliens in the cantina had stopped their own conversations to listen. On the 4th day, Morrison ran out of ammunition for his rifle. Do you know what he did? He picked up rocks and threw them at us. When he ran out of rocks, he used a metal bar as a club. When that broke, he used his bare hands. Zixthara's voice was barely above a whisper now. I saw him kill a fully armored Veltar warrior with nothing but a piece of broken metal and the will to never give up. The floating youngling's tentacles curled nervously. But surely after 6 days you must have won. Even humans must get tired. Zixthara smiled. But it was not a happy smile. On the 6th day I had 40 warriors left out of 3,000. Morrison had 15 humans left out of 30. Any other species would have called it even and made peace, but not humans. He finished his drink and set the glass down hard, on the table. Morrison sent me another message. He said his reinforcements were coming and I had 1 hour to leave the planet. 1 hour. Reinforcements? Asked the green youngling. How many ships? That's what I wondered too, Zixthara said. So I waited to see this great human fleet that would surely destroy my remaining forces. He paused for effect. 1 ship came, 1 small transport with 20 human soldiers. The younglings looked confused. 20 soldiers? But that's not nearly enough to... That's what I thought, Zixthara interrupted. So I decided to crush these reinforcements and then finish off Morrison. I sent my last 40 warriors to attack the landing site. His voice became very quiet. None of them came back. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the music had stopped playing. Those 20 humans didn't just fight my warriors, Zixthara continued. They hunted them, like predators hunting prey. They moved through the rocks and trees like ghosts. They struck without warning and disappeared before we could fight back. He looked at each youngling again. In 2 hours, 20 humans killed 40 of my best remaining warriors, and they did it without losing a single soldier. What happened then? Whispered the gray youngling. Zixthara stood up slowly. His forearms creaked like old machinery. I surrendered. I, a Veltar commander who had won 100 battles, surrendered to Jake Morrison and his humans. He reached into a pouch and pulled out a small metal object. It was a human military badge. Morrison gave me this when I surrendered. He could have killed me easily. Instead, he gave me food and medical care for my wounds. He treated me with respect. Zixthara looked at the badge in his scarred hand. But before I left, he told me something I will never forget. He said humans don't fight to win battles. They fight to protect what they love. And when you threaten what they love, they become something that nightmares fear. The old warrior put the badge away and started to walk toward the exit. The youngling sat in stunned silence. Just before he reached the door, Zixthara turned back. Jake Morrison died in that valley 3 years later, defending another human colony from raiders. He never lost a single battle in his entire life. The humans built a statue of him on Earth. He paused at the doorway. Remember this, younglings. Humans may seem soft, but they are made of something stronger than our armor, tougher than our weapons. They are made of stubborn will and the refusal to ever give up. With that, Zixthara walked out into the corridor, leaving the three young aliens to think about what they had learned. The cantina slowly came back to life, but the conversations were quieter now, more respectful. Everyone had learned something important that night. They had learned why the galaxy's warriors whispered the name human, with a mixture of fear and respect. They had learned why no species ever attacked human worlds twice. Most importantly, they had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who look the weakest. The next evening, the three young aliens returned to the same dark corner of the cantina. They had not slept well. All night they had dreamed of Jake Morrison and his 30 Marines holding off thousands of warriors. Now they wanted to hear more. Zixithara was already there, sitting in the same spot with another glass of blue liquid. His scarred face showed no surprise when they approached. He had expected them to come back. "Sit," he said without looking up. "I suppose you want another story." The three younglings took their seats quickly. Other aliens in the cantina noticed and began to gather around, forming a loose circle at nearby tables. Word had spread about the old warriors' tales. "Tell us about another human," said the green Catherian. His voice was quieter than before, more respectful. Zixthara nodded slowly. "Very well. Let me tell you about Amy Brooks. Let me tell you about the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, and why humans never know when they are beaten." He took a sip of his drink and began. This happened during the 3rd year of the war. The Coalition had built a great fleet to push deep into rebel territory. 200 ships, including the mighty battlecruiser Phoenix. I was aboard one of the escort vessels. The floating alien with tentacles moved closer. 200 ships sounds like a lot. "It was the largest fleet ever assembled," Zixthara agreed. "We thought nothing could stop us. The rebels were scattered and weak. This was supposed to be the final blow that would end the war." His good eye grew distant as he remembered. Amy Brooks was a lieutenant in the Human Engineering Corps. She worked in the Phoenix's engine room deep in the belly of the ship. No one paid much attention to her. She was small, even for a human. Quiet. She fixed things and stayed out of everyone's way. "What happened to the fleet?" asked the gray, 6-legged alien. Zixthara's mandibles clicked softly. "The rebels were waiting for us. They had hidden a massive force in the nebula's gas clouds. When we entered the system, they attacked from all sides at once." He paused to let this sink in. "It was a trap, a perfect ambush. In the first 10 minutes of battle, we lost half our ships. The Phoenix took direct hits to the command deck and weapon systems. The captain was dead. Most of the senior officers were dead." The younglings leaned forward. This sounded like a story about defeat. "The Phoenix was dying," Zixthara continued. "Hull breaches everywhere, fires on 12 decks. The main reactor was damaged and starting to overload. Any sensible crew would have abandoned ship." "But the humans didn't abandon ship," guessed the green youngling. "Some did," Zixthara said. "The smart ones got to the escape pods. But Amy Brooks stayed in the engine room. She said someone had to keep the ship running long enough for the evacuation." He drank again, buying time to find the right words. The engine room was a nightmare. Steam pipes had burst, filling the air with scalding vapor. Electrical fires burned everywhere. The radiation from the damaged reactor was so strong it would kill most species in minutes. "She should have left," said the floating alien. "Yes, she should have," Zixthara agreed. "But Brooks had an idea. A terrible, impossible idea that only a human would even consider." The cantina had grown very quiet. Even the background music seemed muted. "The Phoenix was falling toward the rebel command ship," Zixithara explained. "The enemy thought we were just another piece of debris. They ignored us while they finished off the rest of our fleet." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Brooks decided to turn the Phoenix into a weapon. She worked for 14 hours straight in that burning radioactive hellhole, rewiring the entire propulsion system." 14 hours? The gray alien's voice was full of disbelief. "In those conditions?" 14 hours, Zixthara confirmed. "The radiation should have killed her in the first hour. The heat should have cooked her alive. The toxic fumes should have poisoned her lungs. But Brooks kept working." He held up one of his scarred hands. I know this because I was part of a boarding party that got onto the ship. We were supposed to capture any survivors and valuable equipment. Instead, we found something that haunts my dreams. The younglings waited breathlessly. We found Brooks in the engine room, still working. Her skin was burned red and black. Her hair had fallen out from radiation exposure. She was coughing up blood from the poisoned air. But her hands never stopped moving. Zixathera's voice became very soft. When she saw us, she didn't try to surrender or run. She just looked at us with those human eyes and smiled. Then she went back to work. What was she doing? Asked the green youngling. She was turning the Phoenix into a guided missile. Zixathera said she had rerouted all remaining power to the engines. She had programmed the navigation computer to aim the entire ship at the rebel command vessel. The floating alien's tentacles curled in fear. The whole ship? The whole ship, Zixathera confirmed. A battlecruiser weighs millions of tons. At high speed, it becomes the most powerful weapon imaginable. He paused to finish his drink. My boarding party tried to stop her. We had orders to capture the ship intact, but Brooks had sealed herself in the engine room. The doors were locked from the inside. Couldn't you break down the doors? Asked the gray youngling. Zixathera's good eye fixed on him. We tried, but every time we got close, Brooks would do something to drive us back. She flooded sections with radiation. She vented toxic gas into the corridors. She even caused small explosions to block our path. His mandibles clicked rapidly. This dying, poisoned human was fighting off a dozen armed warriors while simultaneously performing complex engineering work. I have never seen anything like it. How did it end? Whispered the green youngling. Brooks finished her work. Zixathera said simply. The Phoenix's engines roared to life. The ship began to accelerate toward the rebel command vessel. We had maybe 2 minutes before impact. He looked around at all the listening aliens. My boarding party ran for our transport ship. We barely made it off the Phoenix before the collision. And Brooks? Asked the floating alien, though they all knew the answer. Brooks stayed at her post, Zixathera said. She could have tried to escape. There were still a few working escape pods, but she stayed to make sure the ship hit its target. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the bartender had stopped working to listen. The Phoenix struck the rebel command ship dead. Center, Zixathera continued. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. Both ships were completely destroyed. The rebel fleet lost its command structure and fell into chaos. He paused for a long moment. But that's not the end of the story. What do you mean? Asked the gray youngling. Zixathera reached into his pouch and pulled out a small piece of twisted metal. 3 days later, rescue ships arrived to search the wreckage. They found something impossible. The younglings stared at the metal fragment. In his scarred hand, they found Amy Brooks, he said quietly. Alive. Gasps echoed through the cantina. Several aliens dropped their drinks. Impossible, breathed the floating alien. No one could survive that explosion. That's what we all thought, Zixathera agreed. But humans don't follow the rules that govern other species. Brooks was found in a small section of the engine room that had somehow held together. She was trapped under tons of wreckage with a broken spine and burns covering most of her body. His voice became even quieter. The rescue team thought she was dead, but when they started cutting through the metal to reach her, she opened her eyes. She was still conscious after 3 days trapped in that hellish wreckage. What did she say? Asked the green youngling. She asked if the mission was successful. Zixathera replied. She had been trapped and dying for 3 days, and her first concern was whether she had completed her duty. He held up the metal fragment. This is a piece of the Phoenix's engine. Brooks gave it to me years later when we met during peace negotiations. She said I should remember that humans don't just fight battles. They win them by refusing to accept defeat. She lived? The gray alien sounded amazed. She lived, Zixathera confirmed. The medical team said her injuries should have been fatal. Her spine was broken in 3 places. She had massive internal bleeding. Third-degree burns over 60% of her body. But Brooks spent 2 years in rehabilitation and returned to active duty. He put the metal fragment away carefully. The last time I saw her, she was teaching engineering at the Human Naval Academy. She walked with a cane and spoke with a voice damaged by the toxic fumes she had breathed. But her eyes still had that same determination. Zixathara stood up slowly from his chair. Brooks told me something during those peace talks. She said humans have a saying: never give up, never surrender. She said it doesn't matter how impossible the situation looks. It doesn't matter how badly you're hurt or how hopeless things seem. You keep fighting until you win or until you can't fight anymore. He looked down at the 3 younglings. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula was supposed to be our great victory. Instead, one dying human engineer turned our triumph into defeat. She destroyed our command ship and saved what was left of her fleet. How many humans were like her? Asked the floating alien nervously. Zixathara's scarred face showed something that might have been a smile. All of them, he said simply. Every human I ever fought was like Amy Brooks. They don't know how to quit. They don't understand the meaning of hopeless. The third night brought even more aliens to the cantina. Word had spread throughout the space station about the old Veltar warrior and his chilling tales of human combat. The 3 original younglings sat in their usual spots, but now they were joined by dozens of others from various species. Zixathara arrived later than before. His forearms moved stiffly as he made his way to his corner table. The crowd parted respectfully to let him pass. Someone had already placed a glass of blue liquid at his seat. The old warrior looked around at all the faces watching him. Catherian merchants sat next to Zephyrian traders. Gray-skinned Velnari workers shared tables with floating ethereal scholars. All of them wanted to hear more stories about the species that had become legend throughout the galaxy. You came back, Zixathara said to the 3 younglings, and you brought friends. Everyone wants to hear about humans, said the green Catherian. Your stories are spreading through the entire station. Zixathara nodded slowly. Good. Perhaps some wisdom will spread with them. He picked up his drink and took a long sip. Tonight I will tell you about pack hunters. Tonight you will learn why humans are the most feared predators in known space. A nervous whisper ran through the crowd. The floating alien with tentacles moved closer to the table. Predators. But humans eat plants mostly. They are not true carnivores like the Kethmaran. You think predator means eating meat? Zixathara's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Child, the most dangerous predators are not those who hunt for food. They are those who hunt to protect their pack. He set down his glass and began his tale. This story takes place on Titan's moon base 7. It was a mining operation built deep underground in a maze of tunnels and caves. The humans used it to extract rare crystals from the moon's core. Several aliens in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Everyone had heard of the massacre at Titan's moon base 7. I was not there for the main battle, Zixathara continued. I arrived 3 days later, with a cleanup crew. We were supposed to secure the base and capture any survivors. What we found instead was something that still gives me nightmares. The cantina grew very quiet. Even the background music had been turned off. The base was supposed to be defended by 200 human marines, Zixathara said. But when the attack came, most of them were away on patrol. Only 6 humans were left behind. 6. 6 humans against how many attackers? Asked a gray Velnari from the crowd. 200 Kethmoran shock troops, Zixathara replied. The best warriors their species had to offer. They came through the tunnels like a flood of death, expecting to overrun the base in minutes. He paused to let this information sink in. The mathematical impossibility of 6 against 200 was clear to everyone. The leader of these 6 humans was Staff Sergeant Danny Park, Zixathara continued. A small man, even by human standards. Quiet voice, gentle hands. If you saw him on the street, you would think he was a shopkeeper or a teacher. What happened when the attack began? Asked one of the ethereal scholars. Zixathara's good eye grew distant. That's where the story becomes strange. You see, most species fight as individuals. Even when we work together, each warrior looks out for himself first. But humans, Humans are different. He held up one scarred hand. When the Keth Moran entered the tunnel system, Park and his 5 soldiers seemed to disappear. The attackers found empty corridors and abandoned positions. They thought the humans had run away. But they hadn't run away, guessed the green youngling. No, Zixathera confirmed. They had become something else. Something that hunts in the dark. The old warrior's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. For 3 days, 200 of the galaxy's finest warriors were hunted through those tunnels by 6 humans. Hunted like prey animals by predators who knew every shadow, every sound, every hiding place. How is that possible? Demanded a Catherian trader. 6 cannot defeat 200 no matter how skilled. That's what the Keth Moran thought too, Zixathera said. But they were thinking like individuals. The humans were thinking like a pack. He leaned forward, his scarred face catching the dim light. Park and his soldiers moved through those tunnels like they shared one mind. They knew where each other were at all times without speaking. When one was in danger, the others appeared, instantly to help. When one was wounded, the pack adapted their tactics automatically. They communicated without radios, asked the floating alien. They didn't need radios, Zixathera explained. They had something better. They had trust. Complete, absolute trust in each other. They knew how each member of their pack would react in any situation. He took another sip of his drink before continuing. The Keth Moran began finding their warriors dead in the tunnels, not killed in fair combat but eliminated with surgical precision, a knife between the ribs in the dark, a silent strangling from behind, explosives placed where they would cause maximum terror. Several aliens in the crowd made uncomfortable sounds. This was not the kind of honorable combat they understood. The humans used the tunnels themselves as weapons, Zixathera continued. They collapsed passages to separate large groups into smaller ones. They flooded sections with poisonous gas from the mining equipment. They turned the Keth Moran's own weapons against them. That sounds like cowardice, said one of the Velnari workers. Zixathera's mandibles clicked sharply. Cowardice? You think it's cowardly to use every advantage to protect your home? His voice grew dangerous. Let me tell you what real cowardice looks like. The worker shrank back under the old warrior's glare. On the second day, the Keth Moran commander got frustrated, Zixathera said. He decided to flush out the humans by threatening something they could not ignore. He took prisoners from the civilian mining staff who had been hiding in the lower levels. A chill ran through the crowd. Everyone knew what came next. The commander announced over the base communication system that he would execute 1 prisoner every hour until the humans surrendered. Zixathera continued. He thought this would force them to give up. Did they surrender? Asked the green youngling, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Park's response came over the same communication system 30 minutes later, Zixathera said. His voice was calm and quiet. He said the Keth Moran had made a mistake. He said they had crossed a line that should never be crossed. The old warrior's voice became very soft. Park told the commander that threatening civilians had changed the rules. He said the humans were no longer trying to defend the base. Now they were hunting to kill every single Keth Moran in the tunnels. All of them? Whispered the floating alien. All of them, Zixathera confirmed. And then Park said something that chilled even me when I heard the recording years later. He said the humans would not stop hunting until every Keth Moran on the moon was dead, not captured. Dead. The cantina was so quiet that the hum of the air recycling system seemed loud. The execution stopped immediately, Zixathera continued. But it was too late. The humans had stopped playing defense. They became something that nightmares fear. He paused to finish his drink. On the 3rd day, the killing began in earnest. The humans stopped being subtle. They wanted the survivors to know they were being hunted. What do you mean? Asked one of the ethereal scholars. They left messages, Zixathera explained, written in Keth Moran blood on the tunnel walls, body parts arranged to spell out words in the common tongue, recordings of the dying screams of warriors who had been caught alone. Several aliens made sick sounds. This was psychological warfare beyond anything they had imagined. The humans were breaking the Kethmaran mentally as well as physically, Zixthera said. By the end of the third day, the surviving attackers were afraid to move through the tunnels. They huddled together in large groups, jumping at every sound, firing at shadows. "How many survived?" asked the gray youngling. "When my cleanup crew arrived, we found 23 Kethmaran warriors still alive," Zixthera said. 23 out of 200. They were found in the main cavern, backed into a corner, too terrified to move. And the humans? All 6 were alive, Zixthera said simply. Park had a broken arm and some cuts. One of his soldiers had been shot in the leg. Minor injuries for warriors who had just eliminated over 90% of an elite assault force. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small recording device. Park gave me this when I interviewed him later. He said I should understand what happened in those tunnels. Zixthera activated the device. A human voice filled the quiet cantina, speaking in calm, measured tones. "This is Staff Sergeant Danny Park. Day 3 of the siege. We have eliminated 177 hostiles. 23 remain. They have barricaded themselves in the main cavern. We could finish them now, but they are no longer a threat. They are broken." The recording paused. Then Park's voice continued, softer now. "I wanted on record that we gave them every chance to leave peacefully. We offered terms. We offered safe passage off the moon. They chose to threaten civilians instead. They chose to make this personal." Another pause. When Park spoke again, his voice was filled with sadness. "People will call us monsters after this. They will say we went too far. Maybe they're right. But when someone threatens the innocent people, under your protection you do whatever it takes to stop them. That's what it means to be human." The fourth night found the cantina packed beyond capacity. Aliens from every corner of the space station had come to hear Zixthera's stories. Some stood against the walls. Others floated near the ceiling. The 3 original younglings could barely keep their seats as the crowd pressed closer. Zixthera looked older tonight. His scarred hands shook more than usual as he picked up his glass of blue liquid. His good eye seemed distant, as if he was seeing things from long ago. The crowd sensed something different about him. Tonight's story would be darker than the others. "You want another tale about human warriors," he said quietly. "But tonight I must tell you about something else. Tonight you will learn what happens when humans are pushed beyond their limits." The crowd grew restless. They had come for stories of heroic battles and clever tactics. This sounded different. "This story is not about soldiers," Zixthera continued. "It is about a healer. A human who took an oath to save lives, not take them. But sometimes the galaxy forces good people to become something terrible." He took a long drink before continuing. Her name was Lisa Chen. She was a corporal in the Human Medical Corps. Small woman with gentle hands and a soft voice. She ran a field hospital on the border world of Kepler 438c. Several aliens in the crowd nodded. They had heard of Kepler 438c. It was where the Zephyrian death squads had committed their worst atrocities. Chen's hospital was marked with the medical symbol, Zixthera said. Red cross on a white background. According to galactic law, medical facilities are neutral ground. They cannot be attacked by any side in a conflict. The Zephyrians ignored galactic law, said one of the floating ethereal scholars. Everyone knows what they did there. Zixthera's mandibles clicked slowly. Yes, they ignored the law, and in doing so, they created something that still haunts their species to this day. The old warrior's voice became very quiet. Chen's hospital was caring for wounded soldiers from both sides of the conflict. Human Marines lay in beds next to injured Veltar fighters. Ketherian pilots received treatment alongside Zephyrian pilots. Chen made no distinction between friend and enemy when it came to saving lives. That sounds noble, said the green youngling. It was noble, Zixthera agreed. Chen believed that medicine was above politics and war. She thought her hospital was safe because everyone respected the medical symbol. He paused and looked around at all the watching faces. She was wrong. The cantina became very still. Even the air recycling system seemed to quiet down. The Zephyrian 7th Death Squad attacked the hospital on a Tuesday morning. Zixathera continued. 37 elite warriors against a medical facility with no defenses. They came in fast and hard, shooting everything that moved. Why would they attack a hospital? Asked a Catherian trader. What military value could it have? None, Zixathera said simply. They attacked it because they wanted to break human morale. They thought killing wounded soldiers and medical staff would make humans afraid to fight. His good eye fixed on the trader. They had never studied human psychology. They did not understand what they were about to unleash. The crowd pressed closer, sensing that the real story was about to begin. Chen was in the children's ward when the attack started, Zixathera said. Yes, there were children in the hospital, civilians who had been injured in previous raids. Chen was reading stories to them when the shooting began. Several aliens made sympathetic sounds. Children were sacred to most species. The death squad moved through the hospital systematically. Zixathera continued. They shot every patient in their beds, wounded soldiers who could not fight back, injured civilians who posed no threat. They killed the medical staff who tried to protect their patients. The floating aliens' tentacles curled in distress. That is against every law of war. The Zephyrians did not care about laws, Zixathera said. They wanted to send a message. They wanted humans to know that nowhere was safe, not even hospitals. He took another drink, his hands shaking slightly. Chen heard the shooting getting closer. She gathered the children and tried to hide them in a supply closet, but the death squad found them. The cantina was so quiet that individual heartbeats could be heard from some of the alien species. The squad leader was named Vexkar, Zixathera said. I knew him personally. He was considered a professional soldier, not a mindless killer. But that day, he made a decision that doomed his entire species' relationship with humanity. What did he do? Whispered the gray youngling. He shot the children while Chen watched, Zixathera said simply. All 12 of them. He made her watch as he killed every child under her care. Gasps echoed through the cantina. Several aliens stood up as if to leave, too disturbed to continue listening. Sit down, Zixathera commanded, his voice suddenly sharp. You wanted to hear about humans in combat. This is part of that story. The aliens slowly sat back down, but many looked sick. Chen did not scream when the children died, Zixathera continued. She did not cry or beg for mercy. She just watched with those human eyes that seemed to see everything. Vexkar thought she was in shock. He paused for a long moment. He was wrong. Chen was not in shock. She was changing. Something inside her was breaking and reforming into something else. What do you mean? Asked one of the ethereal scholars. Humans have different reactions to extreme trauma, Zixathera explained. Some break completely. Some shut down. But some become something that nightmares fear. The old warrior's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Vexkar left Chen alive. He thought watching her patients die was punishment enough. He thought she would spread fear among other humans. But she didn't spread fear, guessed the green youngling.
No, Zixathera confirmed. She spread something much worse. She spread vengeance. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small data pad. This contains security footage from the hospital. What I am about to show you is why Zephyrian death.
Squads refused to operate in human space anymore. The old warrior activated the pad and turned it so the crowd could see. The screen showed a corridor in the ruined hospital. Bodies lay scattered everywhere. Then a figure appeared on screen. It was Lisa Chen, but she was transformed. Her medical uniform was torn and bloody. Her face was blank of all emotion. In her hands she carried a surgical laser and a bag of medical instruments. This was taken 6 hours after the attack, Zixathera said. Chen had been hunting the death squad through the hospital ruins. On the screen, Chen moved through the corridors like a ghost. She knew exactly where to find her targets. When she encountered a wounded Zephyrian, she did not kill him quickly. She used her medical knowledge against them, Zixathera explained, as the crowd watched in horrified fascination. She knew exactly how to cause maximum pain while keeping them alive. She knew which nerves to cut, which organs to damage without causing immediate death. That's torture, said the floating alien, its tentacles writhing in distress. Yes, Zixthara agreed. But it was scientific torture, precise torture. Chen had turned her healing knowledge into a weapon of revenge. The recording showed Chen working on her victims with the same careful attention she had once given to saving lives. But now she was using those skills to cause suffering instead of relieving it. She hunted all 37 members of the Death Squad, Zixthara said. It took her 3 days. She tracked them through the ruins of the colony like a predator following wounded prey. Did she kill them all? Asked the gray youngling. 36 of them, Zixthara confirmed. She saved Vexkar for last. The recording changed to show the final confrontation. Vexkar was cornered in the hospital's basement, wounded and terrified. Chen approached him slowly, her medical bag in one hand and the surgical laser in the other. She did not speak to him, Zixthara said. She just looked at him the way he had looked at the children. Then she began her work. How long did it take? Whispered one of the ethereal scholars. 14 hours, Zixthara replied. Chen kept Vexkar alive for 14 hours. She used stimulants to keep him conscious. She used her medical skills to prevent him from dying from shock or blood loss. The crowd watched in silent horror as the recording showed Chen working with methodical precision. She was no longer human in any recognizable sense. She had become something else entirely. When she was finished, she sent Vexkar back to the Zephyrian fleet, Zixthara said. Alive, but broken. She had carved a message into his carapace in their own language. What did it say? Asked the green youngling. Zixthara's good eye met his. Touch our wounded again, and we will show you what real monsters look like. The recording ended. The cantina remained silent for several minutes as aliens processed what they had seen. The Zephyrian High Command received Vexkar's testimony. Zixthara continued. They reviewed the security footage. They analyzed Chen's methods. Then they issued a standing order that no Zephyrian military unit was ever to attack human medical facilities. Because they were afraid of Chen? Asked the floating alien. Because they were afraid that there might be more like Chen, Zixthara corrected. They realized that humans do not just fight to win. When you cross certain lines, when you violate certain principles, humans become something that defies all understanding. The fifth night brought a different atmosphere to the cantina. The crowd was larger than ever, but quieter. Word of the previous evening's dark tale had spread throughout the station. Many aliens had come not for entertainment, but for understanding. They needed to know how dangerous humans truly were. Zixthara entered later than usual. His forearms moved with visible pain, and his scarred face looked older in the dim light. The crowd parted silently as he made his way to his corner table. Tonight there was no glass waiting for him. He sat down empty-handed and stared at the table for a long moment. "Old warrior," said the green Catherian youngling softly. "Will you tell us another story?" Zixthara looked up slowly. His good eye was filled with something that might have been sadness. "Tonight I tell you my last story. Tonight you will learn why I know so much about human combat. Tonight you will understand why I sit alone in dark corners drinking to forget." The crowd pressed closer, sensing that this would be different from the other tales. "This story is about Colonel Ben Hayes," Zixthara began. "It is about the final Battle of the Outer Rim War. It is about the day I learned that humans do not fight just to win. They fight to make sure their enemies never forget what it costs to make them angry." He paused and looked around at all the watching faces. "This story is also about me, about the choices I made and the price I paid for making them." The cantina became completely silent. Even the background hum of machinery seemed to fade away. "The battle took place on Kepler 452c," Zixthara continued. "A small world with one human colony. 5,000 civilians lived there, mostly farmers and their families. They had no military value, no strategic importance, no reason for anyone to attack them. Then why was there a battle?" asked the floating alien with tentacles. Zixthara's mandibles clicked slowly. "Because I was ordered to attack them. Because my commanders thought destroying a human colony would break human morale and force them to surrender." The crowd stirred, uneasily. This was the first time the old warrior had admitted to being part of an attack on civilians. I was a fleet commander then, Zixthara said. I had 12 ships under my command and 3,000 of the finest Veltar warriors. The Bjars, humans had 47 soldiers defending the colony. 47 against 3,000. Those are impossible odds, said one of the ethereal scholars. Yes, Zixthara agreed. But I had learned enough about humans by then to be worried. I sent a message to their commander offering terms: surrender the colony, and we would relocate the civilians safely. Continue fighting, and we would be forced to bombard the settlement from orbit. He fell silent for a moment, lost in memory. The human commander was Colonel Ben Hayes. He was 50 years old, gray-haired, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He had been a teacher before the war. The colonists loved him like a father. What was his reply? Asked the gray youngling. Hayes sent back a message that was only 4 words long, Zixthara said. Come and take it. The old warrior's voice grew distant. I should have left then. I should have told my commanders that attacking civilians was wrong. But I was a soldier following orders. I convinced myself that a quick victory would save lives in the long run. Several aliens in the crowd looked uncomfortable. They recognized the rationalization of soldiers throughout history. We landed at dawn, Zixthara continued. The colony was built in a valley surrounded by hills. There was only one road leading in. Hayes had positioned his 47 soldiers perfectly to defend the approach. What kind of defenses did they have? Asked a Catherian trader. Mostly improvised barriers made from farming equipment, Zixthara replied. Some heavy weapons taken from their transport ship. Nothing that should have stopped a professional military force. He picked up an imaginary glass and pretended to drink from it. But Hayes had something more valuable than weapons. He had time to prepare and the determination to never give up. The crowd leaned forward as Zixthara began describing the battle. The first assault lasted 6 hours, he said. My warriors charged down that road in wave after wave. Each time Hayes and his soldiers were ready. They used every piece of cover, every advantage the terrain could give them. How many did you lose? Asked the floating alien. 400 warriors in the first assault, Zixthara replied quietly. 400 of my best fighters stopped by 47 humans who refused to retreat. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The mathematics of the battle were becoming clear. I sent a second assault, Zixthara continued. Then a third. Each time the humans fell back to prepared positions. Each time they made us pay in blood for every meter of ground. His voice became very quiet. By noon I had lost over half my force. Hayes had lost 3 soldiers. How is that possible? Demanded one of the Velnari workers. Because humans do not fight like other species, Zixthara explained. They do not see retreat as defeat. They see it as trading space for time. Hayes gave up ground when he had to, but he made sure each retreat cost us dearly. The old warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly. But the real horror began when we reached the colony itself. He paused to collect his thoughts. Hayes had evacuated all the civilians to underground shelters, but he and his remaining soldiers stayed above ground to fight. They moved through the buildings like ghosts, appearing to strike and then vanishing again. Urban warfare, said one of the ethereal scholars. Very difficult to counter. It was more than urban warfare, Zixthara corrected. It was something beyond military tactics. Hayes and his soldiers fought like they were protecting their own families. Every building became a fortress. Every room became a killing ground. The crowd listened in fascination as Zixthara described the brutal house-to-house fighting. The battle lasted 18 hours, he said. 18 hours of constant combat. My warriors would clear a building only to find that the humans had reappeared behind them. Hayes seemed to be everywhere at once, always where we least expected. Him. What kind of weapons did he use? Asked the green youngling. Everything, Zixthara replied. Military rifles when he had ammunition, farming tools when he ran out of bullets, his bare hands when everything else was gone. The old warrior's voice filled with a mixture of fear and respect. I saw Hayes kill 3 of my warriors with a broken piece of metal pipe. He had been shot twice and had shrapnel in his brain, but he kept fighting. Several aliens made sounds of disbelief. Such injuries should have been instantly fatal. By the 16th hour, I had fewer than 200 warriors left, Zixthera continued. Hayes had maybe a dozen soldiers still fighting, but those 12 humans were holding off 200 trained fighters. How? Whispered the floating alien. Because they were not fighting for military objectives anymore, Zixthera explained. They were fighting for every person hiding in those shelters. They were fighting for their home. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. And came suddenly, Zixthera said. My remaining warriors finally cornered Hayes in the colony's main building. He was alone, wounded, almost out of ammunition, but he was still fighting. Did you capture him? Asked the gray youngling. Zixthera's good eye met his. I tried to. I wanted to offer him medical care and prisoner status. He had earned that. Much respect. The old warrior fell silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. Hayes looked at me with those human eyes. Even dying, even defeated, there was no fear in them. He smiled at me. Actually smiled. Then he said something I will never forget. What did he say? The crowd asked almost in unison. He said, "Thank you for showing me who you really are," Zixthera replied. Then he pulled the pin on a grenade. The crowd gasped. Several aliens stepped back instinctively. The explosion should have killed us both, Zixthera continued, but Hayes angled his body to shield me from the worst of the blast. He saved my life even as he ended his own. The cantina was so quiet that individual heartbeats could be heard from some species. Why? Asked the green youngling. Why would he save you? Zixthera reached into his pouch and pulled out a small metal object. It was a human military medal, tarnished with age. I asked him that as he lay dying. His answer changed everything. I believed about war and honor. The old warrior held the medal carefully in his scarred hands. Hayes said, because tomorrow you will remember that humans do not fight just to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never forget what it costs to make us their enemy. Tears began to flow from Zixthera's good eye. Many aliens had never seen a Veltar cry before. He was right, Zixthera whispered. Every day since then I have remembered. I have remembered the cost of making humans angry. I have remembered the price of threatening what they love. The old warrior stood up slowly, clutching the medal. Hayes died in that building, but his words lived on. I carried them back to my commanders. I told them what I had learned about human courage and determination. What happened then? Asked the floating alien. The war ended, Zixthera said simply. My report convinced the High Command that humans would never surrender, never give up, never stop fighting to protect their people. We realized that defeating them would cost more than any victory could be worth. He looked around at all the watching faces. That is why I tell these stories. That is why I sit in dark corners remembering the dead.